Hello, my name is Emily Scaife and this is Inside the Pod. You join us today to chat about pea protein and vegan alternatives, specifically in this instance to cheese. We are talking about a new product called Cheese from Peas, which has been developed by researchers from the University of Nottingham and the Good Pulse Company. We are joined by Dr Vincenzo Di Bari, Assistant Professor in Food Structure and Processing at the University of Nottingham, and Cesar Torres from the Good Pulse Company. Can you tell us a bit about Cheese from Peas and how you came up with the idea?
Well, yes, it is an idea that's been taking some time to develop, really. And one of the main, and there are several reasons why we did it. Let's start with explaining some, and then Vincenzo can expand on the more technical ones. But essentially, I don't know how familiar you are with plant-based foods out there in the supermarkets in the UK, for instance, and particularly vegan cheese. But the reality is, vegan cheese is absolutely horrendous. Okay, and not only on taste and texture, but actually it is not healthy. You know, myself, I do not consume any kind of dairy products. Okay, but I do not consume vegan cheese because it is very high in saturated fats. You know, coconut oil, which is not particularly good for your heart and your health in general. And it is made mainly from chemically modified starches. Vincenzo can explain later on what that means. But essentially, it is a product that was rushed to market, okay, to try to emulate texture of dairy cheese somehow. But even though it is edible, it is not really a food, because food is supposed to nourish you. So what's the purpose of it? So, but we saw that many vegans, consumers or flexitarians, that they want to obviously ditch dairy, they want to have something, you know. And but we saw, well, the current alternatives are not working. What about if we make cheese from the most sustainable crop on the planet, which happens to be grown in the UK to high quality standards? And so that is one of the aspects, okay? And I don't know, Vincenzo, if there any aspect you want to expand on a technical bit.
Technically speaking, I think without going into too much details, we did know that the reason why vegan cheeses rely on modified starch is essentially to achieve meltability, because one of the best features of cheese is the fact that they melt and they have this creamy mouthfeel. And that is happening in dairy cheese thanks to the proteins that are in the dairy cheese, as well as some of the milk fat in there. And that's why usually vegan cheese contain coconut to emulate the milk fat, and the modified starches to emulate the caseins and generally speaking the protein in the dairy cheese. Our idea was to utilize healthier crop like peas to achieve a similar functionality without having to chemically modify the substrate, in this case, the legume. So that's where we came, what set us on the journey, really.
So why did you decide to use yellow split peas? Did you try other types of peas and just find that those work best, or what was the thinking there?
Yeah, again, there are several reasons for that. One of them is that yellow peas are a very well-known crop. So that has massive advantages. First, because the consumer know it. And secondly, because it's something that is grown in Europe, or in the UK, it means that ingredients made from it will not need very lengthy regulatory approval, because it's something that is known. And it's something that has been used in the industry for quite some years in the form of protein isolates and so on. So that accelerates the development of doing anything with it. Okay, and going back to the sustainability aspect, it is one of the most sustainable crops out there, and the UK have good conditions to grow in more. So why not doing it?
Brilliant. Well, that leads me on to my next question, really. Obviously, the availability of peas must have been a real positive. Is there anything particular about pea protein that makes it produce a better cheese than other forms of, like, other kind of vegan alternatives?
I think the truth is that legumes are higher in protein. They are seeds in general. So compared to other seeds, they are higher in protein, but they are still very, very rich in starch. Now, what we were trying to do was to utilize what is called a minimally processing approach. So we want to functionalize this crop, in this case the pea, without chemically modifying the substrate. And the reason why we started from yellow pea, as I said, the sustainability feature, there is the locally grown feature, and also as we mentioned before, is because it has a very well nutritional balance. It's deficient in certain amino acids, which we can compensate, but it's got a good well balance of amino acid, generally speaking, and has higher than other crop. Now, why we wouldn't go for other crop? Essentially, we know there is an industry already built, a farming industry already built for it, and is locally sourced, and has got the potential to be readily available to support another industry, which is the food industry from a dairy alternative standpoint. So that was one of the drivers. And again, the main aim we had was to utilize physical processes, never chemistry processes.
So tell me about the process. Did you have to come up with lots of different forms of cheese before you hit on the right one? How did you know when you'd found the perfect ingredients, I suppose, the recipe?
I don't know. I don't think perfection exists in a sense. But well, the number of trials we did and we're still doing is very high. I mean, I think now we are in triple figure. You know, at the time we applied for the grant, we were about 50 prototypes, and then as we went along, we used some of the scientific knowledge, some of our own insights that then is crystallized into the patent to develop the formulation that has led us to the first meltable cheese. But the sign that really made a difference for us, what we were using as a direction in our journey, was the ability of the cheese to melt. So because we could achieve a good consistency or good texture, which would resemble that of a cheddar. So the cheddar is our, as a indicator, really, as a comparison, we take a cheddar. And then whilst we were matching the texture of a cheddar, or trying to get as close as possible, the key functionality we've been looking at is the melting. So if something does not melt, automatically will not fit the criteria for what we've been trying to do. And when we came across something showing promising results of meltability, so we refined the research, because the spectrum is very, very broad. And then we try to refine the scope. And as I said, we try to refine the scope, use physical method and what we call formulation method. So we don't chemically modify anything. We blend food-approved ingredient, including a whole yellow pea. We don't work with pea protein isolate yet. We never go through isolate per se. We blending dry ingredient. That give us a product that is able to melt.
Okay. So how are you finding the products that you've created? Does it taste like cheese? Can you use it in the same way as cheese in cooking? I know that you said that the other vegan cheese on the market you don't rate.
In terms of taste, it's quite good, to be honest. We have done quite a few tests, and we participated in certain events in London, in Future Food Tech last September. And then we also took cheese samples to an event in France, and we gave our cheese to the French, which we know are very familiar with their cheese. And the data that we got from that event is that overall that they really liked it. Now the taste is there. Yeah, of course, there are some elements to improve here and there, like with any other product. But ultimately, what we're trying to develop is the core ingredients for companies to make the cheese. We're not making the cheese ourselves. For the time being, we're making it just to demonstrate how the ingredients are, what the potential of the ingredient is to create a cheese which is minimally processed, is much higher in protein compared to existing version, but also that tastes great. Okay, but the final customization of what the taste of the cheese, would be, rests with the final, with the customer, which is the food company. And but the trials that we have conducted, the taste is great. It's much better than any other vegan cheese out there, to be honest.
And how does it compare to regular cheese and other alternatives in form of protein content? Is it particularly high in protein?
I think we are on average below what is a dairy cheese, but higher than the conventional dairy alternative cheese. Also, in the space of the dairy alternative, there is essentially two macro categories. There is the niche, which are essentially derived from nuts, like cashew nuts or almonds, and they tend to be higher in protein than the other vegan alternatives because the nuts are naturally rich in protein. But this comes with some drawback. So some of these almonds, especially the almonds, requires a lot of water to grow. The best almonds are grown only in specific areas, so they really need to be shipped across the globe to be utilized for manufacture. So there are some significant drawback when dealing with almond-based cheeses or nuts-based cheeses, and often these are not meltable unless you mix them with modified starches. On the other side of the spectrum of the vegan cheese, there are those that are mostly based on starches, and in these cases, they can have as little protein as zero, really. So sometimes when you see a little value, like 1%, 1.5, it might well be deriving only from flavor ingredients that are added, and this flavor ingredient, this taste masking ingredient, they do bring themselves some protein, but not the core ingredient per se, because they're all starches, so essentially they're all carbohydrates. So we are on average higher than the plant-based alternative to dairy cheese, but still lower than the dairy cheese. So it's something we are working to try and close the gap.
Fantastic. And am I right in thinking that you've touched on this? You create, is it like a powder, and then you send that to the food manufacturers and they create the cheese? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So we're making our pea power cheese mix, which is mainly from pulses. Okay, at the moment we're starting with peas, but well, we have plans to to expand to other pulses as well. And in fact, we did some work on lentils as well a long time ago. But at the moment, our core focus is just the yellow peas, and basically try to mill it under specific conditions, okay, and to make that very functional powder that magically turns into a cheese using conventional methods later on in a factory. So the idea is that anybody with the right equipment can make the cheese. We just provide the core ingredient. All they need, basically, we provide like a white canvas, okay, and then they decide what color or what extra flavor they want, in the final product.
Fantastic. And do you currently source your peas in the UK?
We are at the moment still doing research and development. For the UK market, yeah, all our peas will come from the UK. We'll be building very good relationship with suppliers, with one supplier in particular, and to provide us with all the materials that we need. We definitely want to engage with other players in the value chain, especially the farmers as well, because we see a lot of potential, but the industry or the sector is not really set up for what we need it to be. For instance, in the case of wheat or cereals, they know what they're producing and the why they're producing, on the what characteristics and so on. But in the case of pulses or peas in particular, there is no like a master strategy or guidance of why the peas needs to be a certain variety and what particular characteristic it must have. That brings some difficulties for us, because then we need to assess all the potential varieties and then see if there is enough of it. Ideally, we want to work with all the farmers, PGRO, and so on, and to try to develop that macro strategy will be to make sure that the peas grown in this country are tailored for making high value ingredients, which they can also be consumed, cooking basic stuff at home as well. But it has to be optimized for making, high value ingredients from them.
I mean, that brings me on to my next question, really. Do you think that pea protein has potential to be used more to create things like this, and you know, there's lots more things that you would be able to do with it if the changes that you mention come through? Do you think that there's a lot of potential?
Oh yeah, Vincenzo can expand on that, but yeah, there is a lot of things. We have explored baked goods, different kind of desserts, and for each of those segments, you know, there are many subsegments of markets that can be explored. So basically, we see a huge potential for using pulses or peas, you know, as a main ingredient for making many different products. And one of the beauties of it is that, as Vincenzo said earlier, that pulses are very high in, or relatively high in protein, is that they are naturally gluten-free.
Yeah.
So imagine, I don't know if you have experience eating gluten-free products. I did recently. They're horrible. And we made, you know, Vincenzo and the rest of the team made a lot of baked goods at the laboratory facility at the university, and you cannot really distinguish between one made from wheat and that one. It was just beautiful. The texture, the taste, everything was beautiful. But it is naturally gluten-free and high in protein fiber.
Fantastic. So
yeah, there's a lot of potential for pea protein.
Yeah, Emily, if I can just add one point I want to add to what Cesar said,
yeah,
which I think is brilliant, is that the legumes we trying to really utilize, as I mentioned before, is through minimally processing. So we not necessarily, there is a lot of press around pea protein, but pea protein is a selected ingredient out of pea seeds, effectively. So at the best, you recover 20% of it. And the rest then you have to find a market. Of course, there is a market for the byproduct or co-product, but that requires a process of fractionation, which needs water, energy, and so on. One of the key research and therefore company ethos we have had is always been try to use something which is minimally processed, and ideally that minimize the use of water and energy, because these are scarce resources. So that's what we're trying to do. And the second point I wanted to make, which I think is related, of course, and also what you were where you were asking about why the choice of these legumes and how is going to be applied in the long term. We don't really know. There is a huge number of varieties of peas and legume in general. And while the wheat industry has really developed to identify the key feature of a wheat variety, of growing condition, and so or final application, such a thing is missing for legumes. Starting from peas, we do know that Canada is ahead of the game in that regard, but there's still an early stage of understanding how what you grow and the nutritional characteristic of what you grow affect the final functionality of the product. And that is some of the gap we want to bridge. We are really actively trying to look for funding and for support, even from PGRO and other institutions, to make sure we become able to map how what we grow and where we grow in terms of soil, location, time of the year, and the variety we grow affect the final functionality, or as we do know for wheat. And once we do know this for pea and in general for legume, then we can really create a sustainable manufacture. We can really create a food resilience. Right now is mostly based on try and error. And I think the mission we have is really to try and, it's a gap we can see. Now we just need support to fill this gap. Cesar and I, we've been trying to work with the researcher. We've been blessed, I'd say. I like to think blessed to work with a supplier that's really been helping us, responsive every time. Top person really, and top people to work with. But we really see that there is a lot of press when we say, oh, we need sustainable food and sustainable good. But then when we come to try and secure this in terms of support, is not so present there. And I think, and I'm also thinking about the UK. From April 30th of this year, there will be limitation of what you can import, and there'll be certificate and so on. And of course, there is one of the key drivers was to make the UK farmers more competitive, and I fully understand that. But one way to make them more competitive is to make sure we understand the value of what they grow. If we don't understand the value of what they grow, how can we help them to become more competitive? And effectively, that's where we are, really.
Thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast to hear future episodes. We'll see you soon.